Have you ever wondered how long it would take to make a battlefield? Neither have I. But why don't we find out anyway? Now, if you're the kind of person who watches every video I make, you may remember the time this saw broke on me. This saw is actually defective, as well as several other DeWalt miter saws. DeWalt issued a recall a little while ago on these, so if you have a saw like this, I'm going to check into that recall. That part that snapped was the part that they issued a recall for, and see how there's kind of nothing back here? I've apparently been using this saw in a, quote, unsafe condition for the past 2.5 years. Oops. So the poplar frame is done. Now this is a soft hardwood. If that doesn't make a whole lot of sense, first of all, welcome to woodworking. Second of all, to actually answer the question, softwood versus hardwood is actually more of a reflection of the species of the tree and not necessarily the actual hardness of the wood. Now the reason I went with poplar versus say just cheaper pine, because it is more expensive than pine, is it's going to be easier to find straight pieces of wood. Now this frame is not perfectly square, but it's pretty darn close. I would not worry a whole lot about it being a little off, just because wood's going to change a little bit in size based on the moisture content of the atmosphere, so there's going to be some flex in your board no matter how hard you try to get rid of it. I probably should say what the next step is. We're going to go ahead and fill in the polystyrene here in the middle. Polystyrene foam is in the frame. A few quick notes. First of all, the foam is probably going to be not the same size as the wood. That's all right. We'll deal with that later. But you want to make sure the bottom of the foam and the bottom of the frame is lined up. That way when people put weight in the board, it's not going to break things, or at least less chance of breaking things. And to enforce that, I've got a bunch of tape holding the foam in place, so don't be afraid to do something like that. It's all glued together with polyurethane glue, which is also known as Gorilla Glue, is one of the brand names of that, because that's kind of the best way to glue foam and wood together. Plus that will fill some of the gaps if you've got not quite a perfect fit. And the last thing is, after I got all the glue in place, I did put some shims under the board to lift the entire board off the table by 1/4 inch, because that glue does expand and you don't want to accidentally glue the entire thing to your work surface. Okay, while this is drying, I'm going to start building some of the terrain on the inside by working with some walls. Oh, yes, I am actually cutting out tiny little oval shaped objects out of cardboard here. You'll see in a moment what they're for. So these little rounded off cardboard pieces I've now attached down to the walls using some little pins. The idea being here, I could take my Dremel with a sanding disc on it and just kind of roughly outline them. So what I'm trying to create the effect is that there's several good stones still left in the wall and a lot of decrepit, rotten, broken away ones. And where I'm obviously using Dremel, those have now been broken away. After I've gone the basic outlines, I take these little templates off, and then I can go back and refine the shapes even a bit more. And I also take care of some of the edges of the wall with the Dremel while I'm at it as well. After I have all the individual walls figured out, I got a sheet of cardboard here that's going to serve as the base of each of the walls. I laid them out in ways that I think are kind of interesting. Trace the shapes of the bases out, cut them out first with a knife to score them. That way I don't have to go all the way through the cardboard and ruin whatever surface I'm working on. Then I can use a pair of scissors to easily cut those bases out, and simply I glue it all down to each of the bases. And while I'm gluing these things down to the bases, let me add some extra puddles of glue, and I can take some of the little pieces of the extruded polystyrene I used earlier and put them in the glue to kind of simulate little rocks. But now we need to get back to the fact that the foam here is about 1/4 inch taller than the wood around it. There isn't a single great awesome way to deal with this, so presumably I'm just going to take some hand saws Maybe sanders, that could be dicey, you know, it's foam. But I'm just gonna go ahead and take off a lot of this 1/4 inch. Now the entire battlefield does not need to be perfect. There can be a little bit of undulation to it. Just try to make the edges of the foam be relatively close to the actual edges of the wood. Now things are coming along really nice with the board here, but we have one problem we have to solve, and that's most types of paint don't stick to extruded polystyrene very well. There are specialty types of paints you can buy for that, but why buy an expensive paint when you can buy another similarly expensive item right here in the form of a large jar of Mod Podge. I had this left over, I think, from the Age of Sigmar Warcry Battlefield or something. So I'm going to coat the entire field in this material right here and let it dry. And what that does, this will bond very well to the polystyrene, and then this will also allow paint to adhere to the surface pretty well. Like that, you've got a basic paint on your board. Okay, let's back up a few steps. I kind of skipped ahead there. What I first did was on the back side of this, I took my power sander and I kind of leveled off the bottom so that any of the foam and glue that was sticking out is now level with the frame, so it'll sit nice and even, well, even as good as it's going to be on the tabletop. I took it outside, and before I apply any flocking, I wanted to give it just a base coat of like jungle colors. So I've got brown, tan, and green. That way, if I miss any areas with flocking or I choose not to put something there, it's going to look natural underneath it and not kind of like a weird, jarring, bright green color. Which, granted, is going to get damaged eventually, so you're going to see that at some point, but for now, it'll look all right. Moving forward, it's time to start painting up some of the details, which is mainly some of these rocky areas. I'm going to make them look like actual rocks. Not all of them, just some of them. And then I've got a whole bunch of flocking to apply, including some from hobby stores that haven't existed for about 20 years. I have a very long-standing flocking collection. Are you ready for the fun, messy part? All right, excess flocking is off. I'm going to hit this with one more light layer of glue, let it dry, and call this part of the build done. Let's get back to working on the scattered terrain. I want to create 2 more pieces, and to do that, I got some 3D prints I designed a while ago for a different project, but you can find anything you like online and go with those. I'm going to kit bash them a little bit, build them into some cool looking area terrain effects, and we'll go from there. Let's talk a bit about painting the structural terrain pieces here. I'm going to take them outside and I'm going to hit them first with a red spray primer. Now it's important to note with styrofoam or extruded polystyrene, the propellant in the spray paint will actually make the styrofoam melt a little bit. So keep that in mind. I'm actually using that to my advantage to make the rocks look a little bit more worn down, but this probably produces some nasty fumes. So do this outside with lots of ventilation. Do not do this indoors. And then after the red spray paint layer, I'm going to add 2 more layers of spray paint. First is going to be a dark brown layer. I'm going to then follow that up with more of a sandstone-ish colored layer. I'm trying to get a series of natural rock colors built up here that I'm going to add on to in just a little bit. Once the spray paint is dried, it's been left to set a little bit, I'm going to go ahead and apply maybe 1 or 2 layers of a light gray colored dry brush. Following that, once that layer is dried, I'm going to complete the paint job using a black wash. Let's call this build done. Now, according to my watch, I came in a little bit under 10 hours and 30 minutes, which isn't bad for a complete Battlefield if you need to get something together for a tournament in the upcoming weekend, kind of like I was doing. I think you could probably pull this off and it should work pretty well. All right, well, that's all I have for you guys here. Oh, I should mention I did add 2 little terrain pieces to this table from projects I worked on in the past. This little, I guess, ruined tower here, as well as this magical tree. I will put links to those videos if you want to see how those work down in the description below. So for real now, that is all I have for you guys today. So I'm Jason, the creator of the Tabletop Battlefield. Thank you all for watching. Hit that subscribe button, like button, and all the wonderful, fun YouTube stuff. So I'll see you guys sometime soon on the next video.